she starts crying when she sees us, and she says, so I had breast cancer, and I had a double mastectomy, and my husband left me, saying I was half a woman. And she said, this is the first time I felt beautiful.
I don't know about you, but I've been in toxic work environments. So to be able to provide something that's the opposite of that is part of your legacy.
It's not because we're just like getting a bunch of influencers in our door and giving them free things, because people see right through that.
Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with my friend, my personal skincare queen, Elisabeth Smith, founder of IndieRx here in Nashville, and founder of the skincare line, SkinDRx. She's a business owner, an entrepreneur, a physician's assistant, a skincare and non-surgical injectable genius, and just an all-around incredible human. I can't wait for y'all to get to meet her. She is truly an artist when it comes to injectables, and we'll dive into what I mean by that in a second. But I truly trust Elisabeth and only Elisabeth when it comes to something going into my face. Originally from Pennsylvania, Elisabeth came to Nashville, Tennessee to begin her undergraduate education for pre-med. She went on then to complete her master's of medical science and obtained her physician assistant's degree with the highest of honors. No shock there. We're going to dive deep into all things business and skin because I can't avoid the two topics I really love the most. Welcome to This or More.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm so happy to be here.
I know, me too. This is like a long time coming.
I know.
I should have looked back at my records, but I feel like I started seeing you in 2017, something like that. It was 17 or 18.
Yeah.
But I want to go back even further. I want you to take us back to the beginning of your skincare journey, because it didn't start in skincare. Yeah. It started in more like plastic surgeon. And yeah, you tell us. Tell me a little bit about the beginning of your skincare journey.
So in honesty, when I was thinking of becoming a PA, a physician assistant, I thought I was out to save the world. I had gone on medical missions trip to Tibet, and I was like, oh, there's just so many lives that I need to save. And I really was thinking that was the path I was going to take. And then as I was doing my clinicals, I did dermatology, a clinical through dermatology, and I was like, ooh, she pretty. But I still wasn't like set on that, because I was like, no, I am in this to like really help people. And it wasn't until the oculoplastic surgeon had heard of me and flew me back to Nashville that I even started entertaining this other world. And I was like, but it feels so vanity driven. And it was really hard for me to wrap my brain around that. And so she's like, just shadow for a day. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. So I did, and we walked into this room. This woman was there, and she starts crying when she sees us, and she says, so I had breast cancer, and I had a double mastectomy, and my husband left me, saying I was half a woman. And she said, this is the first time I felt beautiful in 5 years. And not that I want people not to find their confidence other places, but that to me was so impactful of what an impact skin and looking in the mirror has on our day to day. So I started in oculoplastic surgery for 6 years. So that made me very fine-tuned to the musculature of the face and all of that fun stuff.
Because that's eyes, right? Like specific.
Yep, from the eyes up, basically.
Okay.
But we also did skincare, of course. So I always had that artistic side where I loved injectables, but I loved the sciencey nerdiness of skincare. And so I started there.
Yeah. I think that's probably, everything you just said, if you're listening, you can start to understand why she's so good at what she does, because it is the combination of heart and science that makes you so unique, in my opinion. And what makes you so great at what you do. And why I choose you is because, so spoiler alert, I found you because, and you know this already, I found you because Caitlin Bristow from The Bachelor, Bachelorette back then, now she's done lots of other things since then, but that's how I first knew her, was from The Bachelor, Bachelorette series. She tagged you on Instagram. And I was like, well, if Caitlin trusts her, she must be my gal. And I had recently moved back to Nashville, relocated here, and had never done it before, and I just thought, well, I want the best of the best, and that was how I found you. So, but I love where I was going with that was what I loved about you when I met you was you were just like, I want to make you look like you, but better. Like, I don't want to change who you are, right? I don't want the world to know you've come in and got something done. I just want you to look refreshed. And I was like, you're my gal. Yes. You're my gal. And here we are, how many years? 6, 7 years later. It's crazy. Okay. On that same topic, that is what I love the most about you, is that you don't overdo it, and that you won't overdo it. Like you've told me time and time again, like if someone comes in and asks me for like something that I don't believe in, it's going to be a hard no for me. But how do you like navigate that fine line of not going overboard and not even maybe not picking yourself apart in the journey?
Yeah, that's a hard part where I know what I can and can't do. And so it's hard to look in the mirror sometimes and not do that. But at the end of the day, I truly believe this. It's not just like, oh, she's just saying that because it sounds good. Like, I think everyone's beautiful. And I think I love to highlight those beautiful features. So if I hear someone walking in the door and they're going to pick themselves apart, and like, I'll name 5 beautiful things about them because it's so important for them to see, as an expert in this field, what I see in them. So I think it's in this culture of filters, and just we can get caught up on social media and how every celebrity looks perfect. I think it's so easy for us to do that. And I want to be that voice saying, you are beautiful, but what is your biggest insecurity? And we focus on that, and we make sure, like, is it uneven eyebrows? I got you. You want lips too big? I don't got you. I'm so sorry. Like, God didn't give you that, and I'm not going to either. So it's just kind of making sure that they know that natural beauty is where it's at.
Yeah. And I really do love that about you. So when I found you, when I was first going to you, you were a party of one. And it was a bit of a haul, and I didn't care. It was like 45 minutes to get to you. And I was like, I will drive. And then you branched out, and you decided it was time to have a larger, clinic with other people on your team. So, my audience is filled with business owners, and the scaling concept is kind of where a lot of people get stuck, right? They're like, I don't know. It's just me right now. I don't know how to make this more than just me. So will you talk to me a little bit about what were you, if you can remember, go back to that time, what were you thinking? Where did you get to the point, or what was the pivotal moment where you went, this is time, it's bigger than me, I need more people on my team?
Yeah. So I started with a non-compete, so I had to start from ground zero. And I had to turn away people even if they found me, and I used to see them with exceptions. And when that happened, it was a hard journey, but it was just me. So I was like, if I fail, it just affects me. Right. But then my schedule started booking out, and it started getting busier and busier. And I knew that I wanted to create something that people could feel on a grander level. And so when someone actually approached me about this space that was in the Nations in Nashville, and it was an old church building, and that we could build out this with all these different exam rooms, it was really scary to me, but it was also so exciting because I just knew that I wanted to find a place where I could make people feel welcome and home. And this little dungeon that I was in was not it. And
we made the most of it.
We did make the most of it. Yeah. I didn't know if it was like raining or snowing outside, but
there were no windows.
No windows.
In our original place. Yeah.
So tiny. Yeah. But I was like, I believed in myself at that point that I'm like, okay, we can make this happen. Yeah. And so the scaling, the hardest thing for me when we started to grow so fast was delegation. I didn't know how to do that. And I did everything. And I started getting so overwhelmed. And I took on everyone else's schedules. It's my problem. If they didn't have patience, that was on me. And so that was a really hard scaling moment to be like, okay, who can I invest time in to train to take on some of these things that I might be losing in myself?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, did you have experience from before you went on your own? Because I often talk about that. I say to people, like, I was in the corporate world for 10 years before I became an entrepreneur. And I meet a lot of people now who just jump straight into entrepreneurship. And great. But what I value about my time in corporate world is I got to see behind the scenes how these large global companies set up their digital files and managed monthly meetings or corporate whatever, right? And that benefited me when it was time to go out on my own. So I would love to know from you, like, how did you know how to manage and kind of set up the proper systems and that sort of thing as you grew? Because what is it now? A team of 6, something like that?
9.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't, is the true and honest answer. I learned kind of as I went. I would listen to podcasts. I would read books. I would try to see what kind of leader I wanted to be, because I wanted to establish that first. But then I started realizing a monthly meeting is important. Checking in is important. Not just thinking everything's la-di-da, just okay, is really important. So those are like hard lessons I had to learn, where I was like, okay, inventory, they don't know what's coming in or out. I need to be more vocal with certain things. So it was definitely like kind of a trial by fire, where I was thrown into just me. And then I think we started with four employees. So it was a little bit overwhelming at first.
Well, you've from the outside looking in, you've done a phenomenal job. It's very clear the team culture and the dynamics and the joy. Like, you said you wanted a place that felt like home. And I think if anyone goes and Googles you quickly and finds Indy on, Instagram, you're going to see that you all look like great friends who really enjoy going to work every day. And that's a beautiful thing. Do you do anything in particular to kind of cultivate team culture?
Yeah, so we at least once a year have a big kind of team outing, retreat, whatever you want to call it. We make sure to do that. But connecting, these girls they truly, and maybe I'll take some credit on who I've hired, like as that, because I'm very selective on who is part of our team. But we know that we have each other's backs, and that's some of them just hang out outside of work. Sometimes we cultivate it with indie group outings, but in general, it's always kind of checking in and making sure that we went on. I think conferences are important in our world because we're always learning and growing. And we went on a conference, and I had scheduled this like sunset boat tour for us to go in Miami. And I did a cheers to them, and I just won't forget it. One of the girls, she's like, I think I'm going to cry. She's like, it's not work to me. Like, I just love coming to this place. And she's like, I just love where it is. And that made me just feel like I jumped out the boat. Like
I was about to say, I saw the Instagram reel.
Because that's what I want. I want them to feel like it's not work, that we're just taking care of people.
Yeah. And, whenever we as bosses, when we hear positive, feedback from someone that, quite frankly, we pay to be there, they don't have to say anything nice. It does hit home on a completely different level, right? It's like I don't even know how to describe it. And sometimes I try not to wash over it, because I do think it's important that you take that moment to realize I'm creating, like, I don't know about you, but I've been in toxic work environments. So to be able to provide something that's the opposite of that is part of your legacy. Yeah.
And the hardest thing is not being too lenient. So trying to just be their friend.
Oh, yeah.
That's really my struggle. I'm such an empath and a people pleaser. And that's been my biggest struggle, is to form boundaries and to be able to just hold those. And kind of even find that respect level of, okay, like, I really want to do everything you guys want to do, but at the end of the day, I still have to decide business-wise what we have to do as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. And that is something that I see come up quite a bit once you get to this level of, like, a business that's pretty successful. And I'm going to use numbers as an example, because that's an easy thing for us to wrap our head around, right? Like, once a business is making multi-6, 7 figures, we're going to deem that a success. And now we've got employees typically, and we've got people who are dependent upon us. And oftentimes with the women that I work with, it's a pretty small, lean team. We're not building these like monstrosities of hundreds of employees. And so the dynamics between boss and team member are so different in that regard. And that is something I see come up quite a bit, is even the transition as you grow, especially if someone stays with you from early on as you grow, to suddenly realize, oh wait, the dynamics between you and I are going to have to shift just a little bit in order for the rest of the team to not get too lackadaisical, or just, I don't know, too comfy, right?
Yeah.
In this position. Have you had to navigate that in particular?
For sure. Yeah. It's just anywhere from pay to time off to schedule adjustments and everything like that. I'm really supportive of, as you have kids and your life changes, your schedule is going to change, and I love to adapt to that. But I also am like, I know what a room costs,
right?
And I know what someone not being in that room costs. So it's a huge balancing act of giving people everything they want, with the exception of also keeping that in mind.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the business you're the one protecting the business. Like you're the one responsible for, and I always think of it that way. I'm like, well, if this business goes under, you don't have a job. So it's kind of my obligation. It's in your best interest if I'm a little hard on you now and again, because I want you to stay gainfully employed, right?
I remember one of those hard conversations recently, and usually most meetings are always pretty pleasant. And she's like, that wasn't the most pleasant meeting. And I was like, I hated every second of it. I hated every single solitary second of it, but it was so important because I needed to tell goals and I needed to, say what our expectations were, even though I value her so much.
Yeah. I always say to people when you're struggling, especially if it's a small team, one of my hacks is, and I think this just because this happened to me the wrong way one time and I'll never forget it. So I'm always like, okay, this is what we're going to do instead. But one of my hacks is if you've got one person on your team who's kind of like, not doing what you want them to do, not following the rules, so to speak, is we make it a team learning experience. And we'll just like in the next weekly, monthly, whatever meeting you've got coming up, you say, hey, I want to go back and I want to examine this part of our protocol, this part of our employee manual, whatever you call it, right? And I just want to go over this so it's fresh on everyone's mind. And you make it feel more neutral so that someone hopefully doesn't feel quite so singled out. And that's kind of a smart way, just a hack if you're listening and you've ever had to deal with someone who's like, oh, how do I get this person online? And I don't want them to feel singled out. And I don't want them to feel like they're doing a bad job, but I do need to like reiterate that this is really important. So I love that. I love that. Okay, let's talk a little bit. I mentioned already that I found you through Caitlin, and I'm so grateful. You've managed to, in Nashville, Tennessee especially, and if we've got our fair share of celebrities who call Nashville home, but you've managed to kind of accrue a really impressive high what's the word? Not celebrity, if you will, like clientele. Do you have any secrets that you would give to other people on what it's like or how you did that? And if you feel like that really helped you or not really helped you?
Yeah, I will be forever grateful to Caitlin. Whenever she trusted me, this was so many years ago at this point, it was always an honor. And she had me on her podcast and that was huge. And she was one of those that was a catalyst for me. I will always be forever tell her that. Like, I'm just so thankful for her. But in honesty, she's one of the only people I've ever even given like free things to. So I think what I love about Indy is we are someone who can attract those by just being authentically like giving good results. And it's not because we're just like getting a bunch of influencers in our door and giving them free things, because people see right through that because they're just jumping to the next place that it'll give them something free. And so when people come and, is there ever a time that I will give something to them if someone comes in and I know that they have a following, because we know that's important for marketing. Let's be real.
Let's be honest.
Let's be honest. But they don't get in the door that way. Right. And that's what I pride myself on. And it's all just results that speak for themselves. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and it is interesting because it's like one opens up the next door and then that opens up the next door. I have a client right now who's managing to get a bunch of like, people with 500K, 1 million followers, and it's because they all know each other. Yes. And they all tag her, and the next thing you know, the next one comes calling. So it can kind of create this momentum, so to speak, right? But then, like you said, I think what's so important after that is do good work, provide good results, and then that'll just continue to happen for you, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I do is educate a lot. And I feel like in this world where everyone is trying to stick out, you explaining why you're doing what you're doing is so important because we're so busy.
Yeah.
But to take those few seconds to be like, this is why I'm recommending this. So many people are like, oh, no one ever told me why they did this. Right. They just did it. And I walked out the door and I didn't know what to expect, but that was it. Yeah. And so taking the time to actually like explain that, I think is another thing that, in at least the aesthetic world, that helps.
That makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have known that because you were my only, and I'm used to that from you, but you do such a great job of, kind of explaining, like we do this to even the eyebrows, or we do this for this, or we don't do this because of this, and it does make me feel more intelligent about the whole world of injectables, which I do love that about you. Okay, so what was it, a year or two ago when you decided to launch into products?
Oh, yes. Well, probably 3 years when I started.
Okay, because I know it was a journey.
It was such a journey. I'm just such a skincare snob. And so there's so many things you can just private label out there. And I tried them all and then found this other company that you really could work with them. And I was like, okay, but I like this in a serum versus that. I like ceramides versus, I like squalene, niacinamide. You're just throwing out ingredients and they're like, yes, yes, yes. And they could have intelligent conversations and they had chemists and all the things. And so that took a while to even just find the place.
Yeah.
And then to find what did I want to create was a whole nother question.
Yeah, I know. I have so many questions, and I know it took you years of research. I know it took you a lot longer than you wanted for the actual products to be available to the public. I know there was a wait list for quite a while. But what was the first, what was the impetus? What was the moment where you were like, okay, it's time. I've done all this education around all these, high quality medical skin, grade products, but now I'm ready to have my own on the shelves.
Yeah. I saw some that were missing. So there's so much out there. It's so just like watered down and there's just so many skincare lines. But there were definitely some products I'm like, oh, wait, that needs to exist. Like that doesn't exist. It needs to exist. And so that was kind of a catalyst for me was like, for sensitive skin, we need this type of vitamin C for this. Like retinol, who wants their face to fall off whenever they're using it,
Right.
So... But we want the potency. We want it to do something. So those were kind of where I saw things missing is what kind of drove me into that.
Yeah. And your first product that you finally got out the door, was that the Indie Glow? Was it the...
So we launched with 6, which is wild.
Okay.
Because finally, by the time, to your point, by the time it launched, I had already developed several into that pipeline. So we launched with just kind of some basics, some Sea Bright. Indie Glow pads are definitely like... they fly off the shelves. They're like our number one. Dewy pads were another one that was like a shocking experience. And then some obviously moisturizers in the mix too.
Big fan. What is there anything that you felt like, besides it taking longer than you anticipated, was there anything else that as you launched a product you thought, oh, I didn't, because I've done both as well. And I always talk about how product-based businesses are just so different from service-based businesses, and there's so much more to it. And while some of it's fun, some of it's also pain in the butt, to be quite honest. So was there anything for you as you were launching your skincare line that you just were like, oh, I did not know this was going to be part of this journey?
Picking the container. That was such a thing that I was like, okay, not only do you have to pick it, but then I have to go through quality control to make sure the pumps work. And do they have to be primed? I mean, the containers themselves were like kept me up at night and designing like labels and things like that for those products then. That definitely took way longer than you
expected. I love it. But then, you got it out into the world. You had a pretty long wait list. So I know that you were able to sell out pretty quickly. What's it been like now, fast forward to where we're kind of in a more steady season? Is there a challenge or is there something you're excited about moving forward?
Yeah. So I took like a year off from anything. Once it finally launched, I was so just burnt out and I was like, these are good. I'm done. Yeah. And so I took like a year off and then I just one day had just this flow of like some other products that came to mind. And so started that back up. But I loved that I took that year though, because the people started using the products. I started seeing results. They could believe in the product. That gave me also because I was like, is it going to fail?
Right.
Like, am I going to make all of this and then no one's going to buy it? And so I was really nervous to put any more heart and soul into it until I realized that it wouldn't fail.
Yeah.
So that was kind of when I was like, okay, it hasn't failed. And let's dip our toe into a couple more SKUs.
So the name of this podcast is called This or More. And the reason is because I've coached so many women over the years who have success. And then there's this fleeting moment where they go, oh crap, what if everything slips through my fingers? Like, what if this all goes away? What if it crumbles down tomorrow? And so the phrase that I kept kind of saying was, it's this or more. Like wherever we are right now, this or more is what's in our future. So that kind of sounds like a this or more moment almost. I would love to know if there, what do you do in those moments where, first of all, are there any other this or more moments where you thought, oh no, what if this all goes away tomorrow? And then what do we do or what do you do to kind of like get your mind back in a positive state of mind?
Gosh, I feel like there's been several of those, but throughout this journey. But yeah, I guess the skincare was one of those where it's like it's either this or are we gonna add more? Yeah. And in that time, I had to, I guess, just reorganize also life because I was busy with. I had a little one and a husband, and that's just juggling life with that as well, to not make your business your whole life. When you get home at night, am I just like focusing on, putting my little chemist hat back on, or am I going to focus on being with my son? So I do think it was a moment where I was like, I just needed that break to be able to take that next step of, but what if it all crumbled? Because, if you don't have the shiny new object, you become irrelevant.
You feel that way, at least.
Yeah. So like me launching another product, I would see other competitors and they would be launching a new product and be like, oh man, like what? I'm not doing that. Am I behind? Are people going to jump ship to another product line because nothing new is coming down the pike? So that was definitely a moment of like, what am I doing?
Yeah. So fascinating. And don't you think I think that feeling is exasperated because of social media, because of the urgency that we have, things at our fingertips, because I've been doing some deep conversations lately around, it's funny that you use that word, irrelevant, and what it is, like, what is it that is bubbling up under the surface that's bringing us to that point? Because I think before 2024, I never would have used the word irrelevant and how I feel about myself. But all of a sudden I was like, I think I feel a little irrelevant, and I'm tying it back as I'm still in the midst of understanding this. But for me, I'm like, I think it's because of social media. I think it's because I'm seeing more than I've ever seen before. The comparison trap is real, and if you don't get that immediate dopamine hit that you get when you're in a launch, right? Like when you launch the skincare and everybody wants it and they're talking about it, and then it starts to taper off, and you go, "Am I irrelevant?" And it's such an interesting, I think, a new challenge for us as entrepreneurs to rise above and realize that's not true. Yeah. It's just different, but it's not true.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you had even brought up like the celebrity thing. There was so much pressure for me to be like, well, they'll use my skincare, and I think the other day Caitlin was doing her Get Unready with me, and I saw all the skinny products, and it was just like such a moment where I'm like, it's not just that they're getting sent this PR kit and they're just like, it gets like pushed, right. That people are actually using it. And that was all those little moments where it just like makes you feel like maybe I still am, relevant, but at the same time, I've also cut back on social things where I know networking is so important. But I had to start prioritizing family, and it's so easy to feel that feeling.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, are you still managing the socials? Do you have someone helping with socials? Like what's your relationship? Because you've got now, 3 different social channels probably. You've got your personal, then you've got Indie and Skindy, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually haven't created a Skindy separate one yet, just because of that. So Indie pretty much promotes Skindy. Okay. But it's Indie, and I have a marketing team, and they're phenomenal. Great. We brought them on board last year, and it was just such a breath of fresh air. Yeah. Because it's just, now we have planned content days and things are just like mapped out for us, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have someone else to help with that. So yeah.
That's a huge, huge lift. And it's so funny how often I see people who are still trying to wear, I call it CMO hat and head of IT and, all the hats, when in reality, like, we're big enough now that we don't, just because you're used to doing it doesn't mean it's the smartest thing for you to continue to do it yourself. Right. Yes. So that's so helpful for others to hear that you've got support, you've got people helping, and your socials always look great. So kudos to the marketing team.
Well, it just makes you look more legitimate. I mean, when you're consistent and you have a consistent brand, like forming a brand was really important to me to actually, like, when I worked with them, we made a brand statement, and it's like my favorite thing. I'll read it once a month, and because I want every content to be derived from that brand statement. I love that. And so that was really fun to really be like, who do we stand for, and how do we make everything reflect back to that?
I love that. I oftentimes, and I hate the word avatar, but I'm going to use it. I'll do this exercise where I'm like, okay, who's our ideal customer, or our avatar? And it's not so much about this generic thing, but oftentimes the analogy I always use, if you're a client and you're listening, you'll know this. I'll talk about like who we're having coffee. We're at a coffee shop and we're having coffee. And who is he, she, they, whomever that we are sitting there having coffee with that is our perfect ideal client, customer. And we'll get so specific, like, what is she wearing? Where did she stop before this? Did she have a kid she dropped off at school or not? Like just all, did she go to Pilates? Like what all the things. And then we give them a name. So it's like, okay, Susie. And so then every time we get stuck in a trap where we're like kind of feeling like we don't know what our message is or who we're talking to, I'm like, what does Susie want today? Like, who, and it just always rights the ship. It always brings us back to awareness of like, oh yeah, I'm doing this for Susie. And as long as I continue to do this and show up for Susie, then I'll be moving towards my North Star, so to speak. So it sounds like that's what you've done.
Yeah.
I love
to
that.
At least.
Yeah. Can you share with us what's next on the horizon? Any growth, any exciting things coming?
Yeah. So we're hopeful that a Franklin location will come about in the next hopeful year or so. We moved to Franklin, and so I'll always come to Nashville, but I'll also hopefully have another location there.
That's exciting.
And then we have 2, maybe 3 new products launching. So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, exciting. In time for the holidays or?
So definitely 2 of them will be.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Love
hopefully.
it.
And then the other one might be in the new year.
Okay. Yeah. She's smart, so I had a feeling they would be holidays somehow
Yes.
related if we could. Okay, let's dive into skincare because you know I want to talk about it.
Yes.
So one of the things, there's so many things I like about what you do as far as education goes online. And one of them is always like, you're so good at the Mythbusters. You're also really good at talking about like splurge versus, save. Like where do we splurge? Where do we save? So let's just kind of dive in. Let's talk about, are there any current trends going on in the skincare industry that you're into, or are there any trends that you're like, please don't do this?
Yeah, I think this 1,000,000-step routine is going to drive me insane. It is just so unnecessary and ends up making your skin worse over time because you're just doing too much. Yeah. And even the layering of the products and everything, I'm like, can we just not? Can we just keep this super very in tune to what you want to achieve? Right. So whether that's like you have rosacea or you have sensitive skin or redness or acne or just anti-aging, let's just hone in and let's dial it back into that and see what counts. So, you have, I always call it your core 4. And it's like you wash your face, please. Dear God, wash your face. There's nothing else you do. Wash your face.
I used to be so guilty of this, by the way, not washing my face, but that's another time.
There was a study that said that it ages you 7 times faster. God, okay. Just because all of the free radicals are sticking in your skin. Anyway,
makes sense.
So you wash your face in the morning, put on your vitamin C serum, and then put your SPF on. That's an easy morning routine. Maybe a little moisturizer, but I like a tinted moisturizing SPF, all in one. Let's really keep it simple.
Yeah.
And then at night, you wash your face, you put your retinol on, unless you're pregnant, and then you put your moisturizer on. Simple. Keep it simple. Stop adding on maybe a couple acids a couple times a week, like an AHA, BHA, 2-3 times, get that exfoliation going. But yeah, the trend that I hate is too many products.
Yeah. And I did see an influencer not long ago sharing her skincare routine. And as I watched it, I just thought to myself, I think she just put 20 products on her face. And I'm not exaggerating. I was counting. And I was like, that seems a little excessive. It seems like a lot. Talk to me about this whole taping trend. How do you feel about that when they're taping their face instead
frownies?
Of yeah?
So yeah, I mean, it's never gonna. You might wake up looking very smooth, which is great. That's wonderful for you. I mean, halfway through the day, all those lines are going to be there because we're not. I always say, would you like to know what skincare replaces Botox? and just insert cricket sounds
Yeah.
because nothing does stop muscle movement.
Yeah.
And I hate that. But if you're trying to erase a wrinkle, you have to stop the muscle movement.
Yeah.
So taping's fine. I'm not against it, especially between the chest. If someone's like larger chest and they have wrinkles, awesome. Because if we're going to sleep on our side, we're going to crease. So I think that's wonderful. And it does not hurt a thing. Sleep creases. We can't treat that with Botox. So lines that go up from your lip, on the side of your nose, on your forehead, some of those are sleep creases. And so that's where tape comes in.
Good to know. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. What about some splurge versus save? Like when it comes to a vitamin C, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, so I always tend to say splurge on vitamin C just because it's really hard to be stable.
Yeah.
So you have like Maylove, they try to be C ferulic for the most part, and they're a little bit better price tag. So if you're not going to do C ferulic, maybe that.
Yep.
We have C Bright, which isn't the most expensive, but it's not the, least either. It's kind of in the middle.
Okay.
And then, if you just really are trying to save, I don't hate like CeraVe. It's not a bad product. It might not have a huge percentage, but a little is better than nothing.
True. That's a good point. And I think, I think it was you probably that taught me early on, like your face wash is where you can probably save a little, but your vitamin C, your retinol is where you're going to want to spend because it's the chemicals inside it that make it good or not good, right? Like the more potent, the more expensive it's going to be. Basically, it's pretty basic.
Yeah, you nailed it. Moisturizers and face wash, La Roche-Posay.
Yeah.
Love it. Love their line.
Yeah.
But whenever you're trying to like make an impact, I always say, what's it doing for the skin? Is it true anti-aging or just moisturizing? And so if you're trying to anti-age, you just typically need something that's a little bit more impactful.
Yeah. What about if someone walks away from this podcast and they do one thing, which we already said, you're going to wash your face. Aside from that, if they do one thing to improve their skin, what would be the thing that you would say?
It would be a tie between SPF. I had a patient come in and she was so sweet, but the left side of her face was so different than the right.
She drove a lot.
I knew you were going to say that. And it was so evident. And it took we did a little bit of filler to help with that volume loss. But it took literally double the amount on that side than the other. And so SPF really is impactful, even if you're driving or whatever that is. And then the other one is probably retinol. It's the anti-aging holy grail. It's just our skin just stops, the cell turnover starts to plummet. And so the retinol just makes it think like it's 6 years old again and just speeds it right back up.
Oh, we love that.
And so I love to say retinol would be like probably my number one.
Yeah. SPF, retinol. I hope you're taking notes because she just literally gave you like the holy grail of your skincare routine for morning and evening, even if you're new to this whole
skincare
journey. Yeah. Everyone always asks me, because I'm 40, as of the taping of this video, I'm 45 years old. And everyone always asks me how I look so young. I get mistaken as being in my 30s quite a bit. And I joke, it's yoga and Botox, but I should be more specific. It's yoga and Elisabeth. Because you've taught me so much and I'm so thankful. And I feel like whenever people have bad experiences with Botox, I'm like, come to Nashville and just like, you're going to have to wait 6 months to get in, but trust me, it'll be worth it. Yeah. And come let Elisabeth work her magic because you care so much. And I think that's what makes such a difference with what you do.
Well, you're an easy canvas, so that makes it a lot simpler. But
Thank you.
Yeah, I do love that in the world of aesthetics, I love we're going towards more natural and more even rejuvenative medicine. Yeah. And so I do think it's impactful to find someone who understands we can also heal our bodies and heal our face and in the process look better.
Yeah. So and feel better. And like that's kind of to go back to your story in the beginning where, the woman who had the double mastectomy and how she just felt better. And I think at the end of it all, we talk about all these skincare tips and injectables and what we put on our skin and also what you put in your mind, what you tell yourself. And we do live in a world where people make judgments when they see you and we're visual, we're in a visual world, even more so now than ever before probably. So it's just so important that you feel good at the end of the day. Yeah. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we've talked all the things. Is there any other skincare tips you want to give people before we wrap? Anything else? I know I feel like we could talk for forever about
all
skincare,
day long.
But
Yeah. I would just say, like I said, keep it simple.
Yeah.
If you have something specific that bothers you, just find those specific ingredients for that, like pigmentation. Add one more product to that. That's where just don't try to dive too far in, and also just get like opinions of a professional. That's where I feel like people just dive onto TikTok, and I want to cry into like just, my pillow and scream and be like, they have no training. I hate to say it.
And you don't even know if they got gifted that product or if they're getting paid by that brand.
Or they just swiped a filter and, you just, I
part.
think, and also like embrace your pores. We like to minimize them, but if I could give anyone some advice is they don't open and shut. We can try to get them out to make them look less, but everyone has them, and let's like stop villainizing pores.
Thank you. Pores are part of us. Let's just learn to love them. Where is the best place for our listeners to find you online?
Yes. So my personal page is Elisabeth with an S, Smith, PA, and then ndrx.co is our other. Instagram's kind of where we're most active.
Yeah. And if you know you're coming to Nashville, just go ahead and call and try to get the appointment, because there might be a wait, but it'll be worth it.
Yes, and I've trained every single injector in our office.
Yeah.
So we started from the ground up with injectors because I wanted everyone to be super cohesive. Yeah. That was really important to me. As like a business owner, it doesn't make sense to do that, because you should hire an injector that could bring on a book of business. And I just felt really passionately that I wanted it to always be consistent with the results we were giving.
Yeah, and the bedside manner and the quality. And so Elisabeth and I use the same hairdresser. Hi, Joe. And I saw the other day, Joe posted, he was like, if you live in Nashville and you don't go to Indy to get your Botox or your injectables, what are you even doing with your life? I was like, Joe. That's about right, Joe. That's about right. I feel the same way. We're like diehards. And I think the fact that, like I said, you've been my one and only for so long is just because I can tell that you know your stuff, first of all. You do the research, you do the education, and you care. And at the end of the day, it is my face. So
I am always honored whenever I get to see people like over and over and walk through life.
Yeah.
It's just like a special moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today in the studio.
I loved it.
Sharing more of your story. And I hope if you're listening and you have some sort of a beauty background, or you want to create a clinic of some sort, or even if you just have like a spa or something, I hope you got some nuggets about how to grow and how to create like a really cohesive team. Because what you just said at the end, I think, is really important, training them from the top down.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yay.
All right. We'll see you next time.